Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for tuning in again. And like I did last week, I'm going to cover the news, kind of some highlights from this past week. I don't know if you want to call them highlights, but this week's been pretty crazy for news as well. But without dragging my feet, I'm going to get right back into it. So, if you haven't heard, Haiti has been getting pretty crazy. Things in Haiti have been going insane. The country of Haiti has essentially descended into chaos, borderline on a civil war. But the craziest thing is there are cannibal gangs roaming the country, just causing chaos all over the place. One of these gangs is led by a guy who has been nicknamed Barbecue, because this guy apparently is using cannibalism as effectively a scare tactic, not for a form of sustenance. He's not eating people because he's hungry. He's doing it to instill fear into people. Um, that's pretty darn crazy, if you ask me. What this is going to mean for the U.S. with immigration stuff, probably going to be pretty crazy as well. I would not want to be in South Florida right now. And hopefully, the state of Florida will have some pretty good law enforcement at the ready for anybody else who tries to pull a barbecue in Florida. Um, I don't know if anybody else caught this, but after Biden gave the State of the Union address, he was doing an interview on, I can't remember whose TV show it was, but he uh, effectively apologized for saying that Laken Riley's murderer was an illegal, um, which is crazy because the guy was here illegally. He was not. He did not go through the legal means of immigration to be in the country. So rather than apologize to the family of Lake and Riley for screwing her name up, he would rather prioritize people who are not even citizens of this country, which is pretty pathetic, if you ask me. Um, I can't remember all the details about that guy, but I think he was here um, for like the fourth or fifth time. He'd been deported already a handful of times and was here again and then killed somebody. So if you ask me, I think people that do that are not here illegally and kill people of our country should have cinder blocks tied around their feet and tossed in the ocean. We cannot keep allowing this kind of crazy stuff to happen. And if you are in a state that you can legally carry a concealed firearm, I highly encourage you to do so. If you need to get a permit through your state, I highly encourage you to do so. Good luck with that in states like California and New York because we know that their gun control laws are super strict and they effectively do nothing. Um, Moving on, um, evidence is now being publicly stated that Donald Trump had ordered 10,000 National Guard troops to be in D.C. on January 6th during the protest that happened there. But these National Guard troops were denied from none other than Nancy Pelosi. Um, this isn't much of a shock, though, because anybody that follows news and politics already knows this. It's not a secret at this point. Um, I guess it's kind of good that this is now being said openly in public, but um, it's way too late for that now, honestly. Um, that should have been public knowledge, a couple years ago when it happened. But our media companies are also in bed with the government, and they don't want that happening now, do they? Uh, so anybody that follows the British royal family has probably heard that there's been a photo released of Kate Middleton that has been under heavy scrutiny for photo editing. I guess she went in a couple months ago to have some kind of abdominal surgery operation or something, and nobody's seen or heard from her for a while. So they put out this photo to be like, yeah, hey, she's doing just fine. She's with the family. Blah. But apparently the photo was pretty bad. Now, my question is, why are so many Americans obsessed with the British royal family? Because if my memory serves me correctly, about almost 250 years ago now, at the time of this recording, um, our forefathers fought a war against the British royal family and their forces to get away from the Brits and establish our own country. So it just boggles my mind why Americans are so obsessed with the British royal family. If anybody can give me a clear and concise answer as to why, please leave it down in the comments section below because I would love to know. This just doesn't make any sense to me. Um, However, moving on to some more, um, pressing news that affects Americans. Um, Recently, a whistleblower against Boeing was found dead in his truck outside of a hotel, and his death was ruled a suicide. Um, I think this is as much of a suicide as Jeffrey Epstein's, considering that this guy was going on a bit of a testimony tour, if you will, talking to just about anybody who would have him about Boeing's quality issues stemming years ago now. There's been clips of him circulating on the internet now of him stating that a couple years ago Boeing started cutting back on quality control and leaving quality checks up to people who probably shouldn't have been doing them and stuff, all to cut costs. And now we're seeing the price to be paid for that. Um, Boeing has had several uh, safety and quality mishaps in the past week or so. That's kind of getting a lot of attention, and it should. I mean, when you have a big metal tube flying through the sky with tons of people on board, um, that should be a concern for anybody. So the fact that this guy was found dead and it was ruled a suicide seems to be pretty shady, in my opinion, especially when he was supposed to give some kind of a deposition against Boeing shortly after he was found dead. Um, so in my last video, I also talked about TikTok and why I thought that a ban on TikTok would be good, and I still kind of think that's true, but the TikTok ban that is being put in place now is very, very bad, in my opinion. Um, yeah, I get that the bill that's put forth has very strict guidelines on what would constitute a ban on a an app or a website or whatever that is deemed a foreign adversary, but we've seen how the U.S. government weaponizes this stuff eventually toward the American people. We can't, we can look back at the Patriot Act and how that was supposed to be used to target another people who wanted to commit another 9/11 type attack or whatever. But now the Patriot Act is used to spy on every civilian in the United States. So I don't think that this TikTok ban is a good ban. However, it seems to be picking up a lot of momentum still. It passed the U.S. House of Representatives this past week, and it's gone to the Senate for them to look over it and take a vote on it. But with that gaining momentum, Rumble offered to buy the American portion of TikTok from ByteDance to keep operations running in the United States. Um, if big if TikTok would be forced to divest their American portion, I think that would be a good thing for Rumble to buy, because they've kind of been an underdog in the social media landscape lately, and that would help project them forward and be even more of a competition to the likes of YouTube and um, other social media sites. And as we all know, competition is good. Okay, moving on from TikTok, overwhelming evidence has come out now that Biden mishandled classified documents once he left the White House after he was vice president. Let me emphasize that again. He was vice president and had a ton of classified documents in places that a president or vice president shouldn't have classified documents, especially since he was only VP. However, no charges are going to be brought against him because he's too old to face trial, I guess. However, Trump is still facing charges for essentially the same thing. Even though Trump was the president has the power to classify or declassify documents at their discretion, whereas the vice president does not. This is a big deal because Trump was the president, whether you like it or not. So the fact that you have both of these guys who are were basically faced with the same kind of charges essentially, but one is facing charges in court while the other is not, shows that we have an absolutely two-tier justice system in this country. And if you haven't been paying attention for the last couple of years, then here's your wake-up call, because we see this between Biden and Trump. We've seen how the justice system goes after people who act in peaceful protest. See, summer of 2020 when rioters were burning down cities across this country, but they were labeled peaceful protests, and no charges were essentially filed against people like that. Or the May 29th insurrection, where left wing radicals tried to break into the White House, forcing Donald Trump into the safety bunker. Nothing was ever done about that. But the media for years now has railed against people on January 6th, calling it an insurrection. And people have faced way more jail time and legal punishment for that than what should standard be given out in a standard case like that. This also reminds me of back in 2016 when Hillary Clinton was on the campaign trail for presidency, and she was facing charges, or potentially facing charges, for mishandling classified data on a private server. And they came out and said, yeah, there's evidence that she mishandled these things, which would be a crime, but we're not going to pursue any charges. That was it. There was no explanation given as to why. Probably because, anybody who tried to charge her didn't want to end up committing suicide with 2 gunshot wounds to the back of the head. But I digress. There's an absolute two-tier justice system. And if you can't see it now, then please get your eyes checked. Oh, man, let me look through my notes here. Oh, okay. So more kind of cultural news. Patrick Bet-David over at Valuetainment Network /PBD podcast has hired Chris Cuomo to be on the talent roster for their podcast. If you don't know who Chris Cuomo is, he was formerly a TV host at CNN on one of their daily shows they did. And he repeatedly lied to cover up his brother Andrew's actions while Andrew Cuomo was governor of New York during COVID, mind you. If you don't remember, Cuomo ordered like way more lockdowns and stuff on people, forced people into nursing homes who shouldn't have been in nursing homes, resulting in the death of like 15,000 people from COVID. Elderly, sick people who shouldn't have gotten sick. But Chris Cuomo repeatedly defended his brother for doing so. And he's just lied and lied and lied about a lot of stuff. In my opinion, this was a bad move for PBD over at the PBD podcast. So I enjoy the PBD podcast, but I'm going to be very selective for what episodes I listen to in the future. And if there's one with Chris Cuomo on it, I'm probably not going to listen to it because I will not support anything that Chris Cuomo does. Sorry. We have to get the message loud and clear to these people that if you do heinous things like that, you are not welcome in polite society. Just that's just a matter of fact. Like when you lie repeatedly to cover up your brother who's killed thousands of people, yeah, you should be shamed and you should be shunned. Honestly, in my opinion, if I'm wrong, let me know. But that's kind of how I see that. Oh man, all right. Already talked about the TikTok ban. Oh, some good news here. Now take polling with a grain of salt, because we all know that polls can be inaccurate to say the least. But the general sentiment for Donald Trump as president again is trending positive in several battleground states. Um, this is good, and it kind of shows me that a lot of people are waking up to a lot of the craziness that's going on, or at the very least, just seeing how their grocery bill has been affected for the last 3-ish years since Joe Biden took office compared to what it was like when Trump was in office. They've seen how much they're paying for gas at the gas pump every time they go fill up now compared to when Trump was in office. People are having to work 2 and 3 jobs now just to barely make ends meet, whereas when Trump was in office, the economy was doing pretty good. So this gives me hope. And also, 6 charges against Trump in the election interference case in Georgia were dropped, which is good, but he also has many more charges that he's facing in that case. I don't remember if I already said this, but John Barnett, who was the Boeing whistleblower, apparently told a friend of his a while ago that if he was to be found dead, that it wasn't suicide, that he was not suicidal, and that he wouldn't do that to himself. Um, Again, seems kind of shady that he would say that, and then he would be found dead of apparent suicide with all the Boeing controversy going on. Fannie Willis, who was the prosecutor. Wait, I might be getting that wrong. But anyway, she was involved with the Georgia election interference case against Trump, was also found on some charges of her own, but she's effectively been cleared of all those charges because the judge there apparently has no spine, no backbone, or no principles. So that also, again, just facilitates the fact that there's a 2-tier justice system. If you're on the political left, you can essentially do no wrong. If you're on the political right and you get caught jaywalking, you're going to get life in prison. I mean, I know that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but that's exactly what's happening now. If you're on the left, you can commit crimes and do no wrong. If you're on the right, you can, do very minor crimes and have the whole book thrown at you. So I highly encourage people, if you have primaries coming up, vote out people who have been in office for a while or who are just doing a terrible job, and let's vote some people in that can get the job done and done right on behalf of all Americans. And lastly, James Lindsay was on Joe Rogan's podcast this week, and I listened to the whole thing. And it was a very interesting podcast. James Lindsay brought up a lot of talking points, all of them political. But one that I thought was interesting was the topic of what he called degrowth. This is essentially an intentional shrinkage of one superpower to rise up another. If that sounds kind of familiar, aka the United States and China, that's exactly where he was going with that. And talking about airline manufacturers like Boeing, he's saying that a lot of the now his claim was that instances like Boeing having all of these quality issues is intentional to shrink the American manufacturing of passenger jets to then prop up the Chinese passenger jet manufacturers to then make China a manufacturing superpower on the world stage. Is this true? I have no idea. However, he was saying that Chinese jet manufacturers have a pretty new jumbo jet they'd like to try out, but because the American market is essentially a monopoly on airline travel, they can't do that. But all of a sudden, Boeing starts having a ton of problems. Hey, there's an alternative here that might be, worthwhile trying out. So, definitely putting on my tinfoil hat a little bit there, but that tends to make a little bit of sense. So, where am I going with all this? Right now, kind of the same as where I've been. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on, but there's a lot of reasons to have hope. As I've said before, the upcoming voter base, I guess you would call them the Gen Z, is tending to be more conservative because they've seen all the crazy stuff going on, like with my generation, and they're saying we don't want that. And with cases like Trump gaining favorability in a lot more states, this has given me a lot of hope. However, we can't just rely on one guy to do the job. We have to vote in people at our local and state levels who also share the same values of putting America first, Americans first, not other countries. So, at the day of me recording this, it is March 16th, 2024. Here in Ohio, our primary election is coming up on Tuesday, March 19th. Or wait, I don't think that was Tuesday. It's March 19th. So if you're watching this in real time or, before the 19th of March, 2024, get to the primaries, go vote, and vote in people who have American interest at heart and vote out all these establishment politicians who just want to get rich off of our backs. So I'm going to wrap it up with that. I've talked long enough. So I will see y'all next time. And if I was wrong with anything, let me know down in the comment section below. I'll see y'all next time.